What's going on, guys? Finally got the interview with Derek Kimball of Kimball Hardwoods. The first couple of minutes are just sort of background, and then we really get into it about 10 minutes on. Just a great interview with a good friend. I've been buying from him for a while now, and just wanted to sort of share his insights with you guys on the guitar business, the wood industry, and how he goes about getting his stuff. So I'm trying to figure out how to do the audio better for these. Not everyone can jump on a Zoom or a conference call. So we've got a little bit innovative recording methodology here. You just see me. Let me know how you want me to sort of drop these, if you just want to hear the audio or you actually want to see my head bobbing around here and there. But we'll get right into the interview. But we're here with Derek Kimball, Kimball Hardwoods. I've been telling you guys I'm going to be doing this for weeks, months, and haven't gotten it, but wanted to just run through some basic questions with Derek and just sort of do an interview. And I've been posting on Derek's stuff for, I guess, the last year. And I think you've got the world of fire, man, with all the stuff you're posting. You just post some incredible stuff on Instagram and selling it on eBay. I think everyone kind of wants to know, like, how'd you get into this? Where were your influences getting into the business?
Yeah, well, no, appreciate the kind words. Yeah, it's been a pretty crazy ride, to be honest with you. I'm 39 years old now. Grew up in the state of Rhode Island, a pretty small state, but pretty interesting state, where we're located in the Northeast. We have a lot of Eastern maple. We're primarily a maple company, but let me back up a second. So I grew up in a wood shop pretty much my whole life. My dad is a 40-year fine finish cabinet maker, master craftsman.
There you go.
So being here in the East, we kind of utilized Eastern stuff, and I kind of got exposed at a young age to obviously woodworking tools and equipment, and on job sites with my dad, stuff like that. And so we occasionally do some nice furniture, or my dad would, with bird's eye maple. Occasionally some curly maple, mahogany, stuff like that. So that was my introduction to the wood business. But, I didn't really have a passion for it then, but I was very familiar with it. And so, life happened. I think when I was a late teens, 18, 19, I actually considered going into business with my father. But if you had known both of us back then, 20 years ago, we're very opinionated, just to say that the least. Yeah. So it was best that we didn't go to business together. So actually, I went on my own separate way and ultimately ended up in the food industry of all places, and where I spent almost the next 20 years just every facet of the food industry, and actually got a really great sales background, excelled. But all through that time, I've always been a guitar player. So back when I was, 13, 14, I picked up the guitar. Of course, music back then was very different than it is now. And
for sure.
I wasn't thrilled with the grungy, punky music. I always had loved blues, loved...
I think there's a whole generation of us that didn't like the grunge. Like, if you grew up, you had sort of Guns N' Roses, and you'd sort of search back from there. Like, there's that group, and then there's the group that loves the grunge, and it's like there's two sides of us. Because I did the same thing. I went from Guns N' Roses into Jimmy, and then I kept going into like B.B. King and Albert King, and then I eventually got into like T-Bone Walker, who kind of started it all. And it's just funny listening to guys, guys that really do this. For some reason, we all love the old blues stuff, all that old rock and roll. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, my influences are pretty crazy range. I really liked classical piano, so I have a pretty diverse background in music as far as what I like and what influenced me. But anyway, from Jimi Hendrix to, I did like some of the grunge, but not, I think they killed it. They played too much of that, so I kind of moved on. Yeah. And then I'm actually back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we were in a bunch of bands as a guitar player, and probably my greatest influence, to be perfectly honest with you, is Steve Vai was probably my biggest influence. I
Oh
got a
yeah,
chance to meet him a
yeah.
few times, and so more of that virtuoso guitar stuff. And I always had guitars, man. I think at one point I had 20 guitars and playing with 3 full stacks. I mean, it was the life, right? No worries in the world, and we're all going to be rock stars, quote unquote.
So
So
did you ever get into the shop and build anything on your own, or were you,
that's the
when
one
you had all
thing I
that
never
stuff?
did. I never did. I will say this: my dad in the '90s had built. I had I had found this really cool guitar, and to this day I still can't verify what it was, but I was told by a good friend of mine who's a luthier for many years here in the state that it was a JG in Nashville. I had gone to one of these music stores that's no longer around, and I
Yeah.
saw this funky axe on the wall, and they wanted $300 for it. And I played it, and I was like, "Wow, this thing had a Caleb Bridge." It was just everything about it was right. I was like, "Wow, this thing is awesome." Well, it turns out some dude in the '80s, colored it speckled purple, and I ended up taking the finish off it, and I
Yeah.
realized that this was a completely different guitar. Anyway, so my dad knew how much I love music and all that, and unbeknownst to me, he took the body, and as a fabricator, it's pretty crazy because we had years before that I had seen an issue in DuPont Corian's magazine where, and I still to this day can't find it, but they had replicated a Fender Strat in a Telecaster made out of DuPont Corian, and they were
Huh.
offered $250,000 for these guitars, and never took the money. So that just fascinated me. And my father went ahead and made this guitar, freehand routed it out of Corian. To this day, I still have it. And it was
That's
just one of
funny.
those things that everyone said it couldn't be done, and he did it. So, but I never personally built. That's his skill set. And so, anyways, I'm getting off track here, but
Yeah, no. So how'd you get into then peddling wood? Like, where did you make the jump from food service into doing this? How did you kind of get into that?
yeah. So I back in, oh man, it was probably late 16, early 17 is when I really took it serious. I just had enough in the food industry. And so I thought to
Yeah,
myself, I had accomplished much. I had some money. And I just remember thinking, I got to get back to playing guitar. It was one of the, I had played it for a long time. I took about a 5 year hiatus. And I'm like, lots of stress, lots going on. And I got to get back to playing the guitar. And then all of a sudden I remembered, I'm like, a lot of the guitars I bought over the years had, music bands with quilted maple, and I said, I said, I started thinking the wheels were turning. I said, how can I start a business, incorporate all my family? My wife's a marketing major. I'm in sales. I know woodworking.
yeah,
I'm a guitar player. My dad's a woodworker. I said, you know what? Let me look into this. Right? I didn't have any high hopes. I thought, forget it.
yeah,
I'm the last one on, and it's never going to work. And
yeah,
what I found out quickly was there was a huge void in the industry. And actually, what I did was I spent a lot of money. I bought from everybody, and I did that deliberately to size everybody up to see, more or less how
yeah,
the industry was. And what I quickly learned was the industry was full of elderly men looking to charge too much money, didn't want
yep,
to
yep.
communicate, didn't want to package correctly or ship in a timely manner, and
No, and they surely didn't want to get on the internet. I mean, I've seen that in some of the businesses I've worked for. It's like they just didn't want to make that jump. And so I was doing the same thing for years. I had one guy in Washington I was buying from, and then he got in trouble for illegal cutting. And then the other guys would just throw whatever you would have up on, eBay. And it's like, it was like hit or miss. You just like, no one was consistently getting good wood out there.
yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from that experience, that little project I did, was how blown away I was at the fact that you didn't get the wood. There was a high percentage of suppliers that didn't actually ship the wood. Let me say, didn't ship the wood that you ordered, or the wood looked nothing like the pictures of the product that was
Yeah.
for sale.
Yeah.
And that to me was baffling. I couldn't understand how or why people would do that. I don't know. Anyways, I found an opportunity when the first 2 years of this business, I did everything myself, absolutely everything. and it was crazy. Nobody wanted to help me. Absolutely nobody. My wife, my father, nobody. So after I did well over, I don't even know, there's not a number for the amount of hours I did. I don't think I saw my wife or kids for a couple of years, but I pretty much built it from the ground up. So it got to the point where even my family recognized, wow, okay, he's doing something here. Maybe we should offer some help. And so I had gotten my wife involved a little bit, but she's kind of taken a step back now that it's gone a lot bigger. And my dad works full time for me, and then so we get some help. Oh, that was a challenge though, because my dad, being a proud high end Finnish guy for 40 years, it's tough to go work for his son. But we've worked through some of the kinks, and I'll be honest with you, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be talking to you here, because once he did decide to help, it really was a big help.
Yeah, me and my brother go back and forth a lot. He's got like a side furniture business, and I'm doing the guitars, and we've both grown, to the point where we could probably do something together, but he wants to do furniture and I want to do guitars still. And I'm like, we haven't gotten over that, like in the same spot at the same time. So I'm like, well, maybe in 10 years we'll get there. But that's awesome. So like, as you got going, like how much capital did you put into this? Like how much of your own money did you take to get started? Because I know just getting the wood at retail can be expensive. Like how much sort of like trial and error did you get into as you got going?
Yeah, well, that's the thing about the wood industry, right? Because it's not a manufactured good. And I had an idea, but you really don't know until you're fully committed. And I think initially out of the gate, I think I spent $50,000, and
wow.
A lot of that crashed and burned real bad. Ultimately, what happens in the wood business is, it's like I said, other than going up against industries where if you want more, they make more. It doesn't work that way in the wood industry. It's not only the wood industry; it's the art business. So
yeah.
My customers are emotional. They see a piece, they think it's beautiful. I have to have it, right? Well, I'm no different.
Oh my God. I've seen some of your stuff on Instagram, and I keep telling my wife, I'm like, I got to stop following you. Cause like every time you post something, I'm like, I want that. And then I want that. And I want that. And I'm like, I haven't even gotten to some of the stuff I first bought from you, 3 years ago or whatever, because I was like, this is my special like I got all these special stash pieces, and I always 6 months sort of rotate what I've got going to keep it, moving. And I'm looking at this. I was like, oh, I've just got too much. I was like, I got to stop following this. It's like, I see these pieces and it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. Until the next one, D. You know how it works. So that's the truth on my side too. I am not immune to that. Which I thought that it might be different. It's not. It just cost a lot more when I make that emotional purchase. So, and that's the thing about the wood business. There's no guarantees. I know how to professionally grade. I can go fly out to the West Coast or wherever I go, even here in the East, go up to Canada and find a veneer log. But even a veneer log, there's no guarantees. You don't know what you have until you open up that log. So there's a massive amount of risk that goes into the wood business. And I think what people don't realize is there isn't an endless supply of the highest grade. There just isn't. And
no,
it's a very, very small portion of what we do. I mean, we put, I call it propaganda. We put that propaganda up on Facebook and Instagram, and we do have quite a bit of it. But what people don't see is the pallets and pallets and pallets of wood that are subpar.
Stuff that just isn't good.
Yeah, they're 3A grade, or they're even what we call a hobby wood, which is more of a turning wood that has a defect or some color.
Yeah, even when you get like a high grade piece, you cut it open, you got a piece of sap in there or something. It's like you never really know what's going to be in that. But yeah, speaking about going out to Washington, I know we tried about doing this, earlier in the new year. But you were out in Washington, out there for a whole week. I've got some videos I'll post up for you guys to see here live. But I saw you cut down a tree. Yep. I mean, you were out there for a whole week. Like, how did you make some of those connections going out there? How did you just talk through that experience? Because I've always sort of heard about, you got to be out there, and you spent a whole week. Like, I think you said you had a whole tractor trailer coming back. So like, how
Yeah.
was that trip? What was that like?
Yeah, it was exciting. It was stressful. It was insanely expensive. Every 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 exciting thing you could possibly go through. It doesn't happen overnight. I had my first experience with the West Coast, specifically the peninsula, and you'll probably hear me
Yeah,
say that a lot. Happened 20 years ago. We used to go out there and climb and hike, and I just fell in love with the peninsula, which was so I never really
yeah,
lost touch with the peninsula. Then, so fast forward in the wood business, and lo and behold, not everyone knows this, but big leaf quilted maple or big leaf maple, it's a small portion of the country and the world that it comes from, and it's
yeah,
primarily Washington State. It grows in some parts of more of a coastal tree where it grows in Oregon, very very small parts of Idaho, and very very small parts of southwestern British Columbia. So that said, the best quilted maple, which we're all after, grows on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. And
yep,
just to give
yep.
you an
That's that little. It's just what east of Seattle. It just jets out there, and between, it's like that triangle, and
yep.
that's where pretty much all of it comes out of, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's let's put it this way. We reside in the state of Rhode Island. That's about the size of the Olympic Peninsula. That's it. So the
True.
number one most highly desirable maple in the world only comes the most steady supply, which it's not really steady, comes from a geographical area about the size of Rhode Island. So as you can imagine, it's tough to find, tough to make connections. Let alone all the issues with methamphetamine, the drugs that are happening, the poaching that's happening out there, and that's why I spend time out
Yeah,
there
the
too.
poaching. That's the guy I was buying from was poaching. He actually went to jail.
Yeah,
Um,
you got to be
and
real
I didn't
careful.
realize that until like he was my supplier probably when I first got into this in like 2003 to 2007, and then he's like, I'm gonna go to jail, and I was like, what have I been buying, man? And
Yeah.
and that was it.
Yeah, it's there's nothing irresistible than free money, right? So you got to be real careful. I work really hard at making relationships. I have eyes and ears out there deliberately because listen, I'm not immune to this either. I've
Yeah,
had to fire people and not buy from them because they were doing the right thing, and then they just fell off the wagon, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, so and so got arrested. He's doing like, whoa, okay. And contrary to what a lot of people think, unlike other wood species, this is one of the most unique woods in the world to deal with. I'm problematic because it's really
yeah,
controlled one tree cutter at a time, and all that stuff on federal land is illegal to forest. So it's
yeah.
all
That's exactly what this guy was doing. Was
yeah, it's
doing.
landowner by landowner, tree cutter by tree cutter.
Yeah,
So you have to be really careful. So, anyways, we have a bunch of great relationships, but the biggest challenge, and this not just for us, this is for larger guitar manufacturers and pretty much anybody, to be honest with you, is a steady supply of this wood. And so we've made some inroads, some relationships with also log wholesalers, and prominent companies and families that were out there. And so there's been some changes. I can't get into too much, but I had gotten a
yeah.
call, and there was quite a large, let's just call it a private, I wouldn't call it a private collection, a massive amount of blocks that were just sitting there. And I'm literally not kidding you, 7 to 20 years old, and which is
Oh
almost
well.
unheard of, you know. So I went out there and sifted through 7,000 blocks. I took 4,000, and we loaded them up on a tractor trailer, and kind of financially crawled my way back to the east.
Oh man, how sore are your hands after going through
Oh
7,000 blocks, man?
yeah, demolished. I was doing, I put out some videos here and there, but I was literally working from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. every single day,
Jesus.
nonstop. So it,
So now you got the track. So the trailer's now in Rhode Island. It came back, right? You
yes,
got all that stuff.
yeah, safely. It made it back. I broke the seal on it, and it was miraculously not. It was all there. And I have heard horror
That's
stories
good.
of certain companies switching pallets out, so I was very concerned.
Yeah.
So, and I think the key is you just don't. educate truck drivers what they're hauling back. You know.
Yeah.
So
No, I think the biggest thing I've gotten as I gotten older, it's really about trust. Who do you trust? Who can you have a real conversation with? I know with all my viewers, I'm really straightforward, and that's what I love having dealt with you for so long. Is that we've talked, I don't know, maybe 10 times over the last 3 years, and it's about relationships. It's about getting to know these folks. Trusting what you're going to buy, trusting who you're going to deal with. Like, are you going to get taken? And I've seen a lot of guys get taken. I mean, I bought wood, I put it on the saw, and they say it's dry, and you cut it, and then as you're cutting it, it already starts to cup, and then you get through it, and it just sort of like explodes. You're like, what the hell did I just get?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So the trust, and even with the shipping and everything, like you got to have these relationships built with folks. Like, you're going to put the lock on, and then you lock the trailer, and then you get home and you're like, that's not my lock. What is this?
Oh,
like, yeah,
it's endless.
Those games, man.
I mean, just to give people an idea, other than it costing 6 figures, plus it's $8,000 just to get the trailer back home. That's before you even get the wood in your possession. And then, one of the other things too to take into consideration is, and you know this because you work with wood all the time, is wood is very temperamental. And right now it's the rainy season out there. So the wood's EMC is running at about 20%, maybe a little tick under, 16 to 20%. Well, simply just being here in the Northeast, it was 12 degrees this morning and about 20% relative humidity. And just being here, it wants to suck about 5 to 7% of the moisture instantly out of the blocks. And we run the issue of the blocks actually splitting. So it's...
Yeah, no, you got it. I think that's... When I ship wood, or you hold these guys and you hear some of these stories, I'm like, did you just let the block sit for like a week, 2 weeks? Like, did you let it acclimate? Even with guitars, when we ship guitars, I do a lot of oil or unfinished guitars, and I immediately unpacked it. I'm like, dude, you got to let it sit, man. Like, I'm shipping your guitar from Chicago and 20 degrees, and you're in Tampa and it's 80 degrees. Like, just let the damn thing sit for a while. Like, I know you want to pull it out, but like, don't put string pressure on it. It's the same thing with the raw wood. Even if it's wax sealed on the ends, those faces will absorb wood.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
and it's like you gotta just let stuff sit.
I think you're 100% right about that, and I think the one bit of advice that I would give all your listeners is that I understand the excitement, right? You get something that's beautiful and you're ready to rock and roll. But here's the thing about wood. Wood is that temperamental, and a lot of the dimensions that we use in the Luthier business, they're not flattering to wood stability. So if it's a 1/4 inch drop top,
that's true.
It wants to move around, and I think the key is to maybe be a little bit more patient than you'd like to be. Put it under flat reference pressure. And this I tell people all the time too. I think there's this misnomer that everything needs to be stickered. If the wood has been kiln dried or has been air dried for many, many years, you don't have to do that. You just have to keep it flat under reference pressure. As long as the end grain is exposed, it might take a little bit longer, but the wood will acclimate to your shop. And yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to show all their buddies and build a guitar in the next 24 hours? But and the other thing too is most of this highly figured wood, so we're adding an element of instability, right? So if it's quilted maple, forget it.
It's a thin piece.
It's a flat sawn figured piece of wood, and I think I'll do a video at some point where we actually open it up and show you the actual wood grain, and you'd be blown away. It's like, whoa, how is that wood even stable, like at all? So. But anyways.
So you were, the last couple of questions here, and let you get back to work. You have a Resaw machine. Where is that? Is that a Grizzly machine you got, or tell me about that?
Yeah. So I made a decision. Listen, I wasn't immune to any of the shop mishaps that everyone else went through. I mean, I had a 19-inch throat Grizzly vertical bandsaw, and I went through all the frustrations that everyone else has been going through for years. Blade drift, the guy goes out on you halfway through it. I'm using the wrong saw blade. It's crazy. So, and then you hit stored up tension. Wood just does whatever it wants. So after losing thousands of dollars, I realized I have to spend thousands of dollars to get the right machinery. And I had always had my eyes on that machine, but at the time, if I purchased it, that those are the risks when you're in business. You go, okay, I'm gonna drop 20 grand and buy the piece of equipment that I absolutely need. But if I do this, what can I do? And I, so we suffered through it, probably a couple years longer than I wanted to. But once we got that, it was a game changer. That machine, when it's dialed in, and it for the most part, it's got a 30 horsepower motor. We're running we used to run a 3/4 tooth carbide tip blade, very expensive. Put that blade under 1700 psi, adjust the feed rate. It's all digital, and it's a dream. I remember the first.
Well, you've shipped me some one piece. I've got, I think, 10 one piece tops, and the accuracy I see coming off of that, it's amazing. Because I've got a Laguna 16 HD, which is an awesome Resaw.
Yep.
Because I was getting stuff early in the day in Resaw. I'd keep a piece for myself and sell it. That's when I was trying to build up my business to sort of like pay for all my tools. I still would lose, an eighth to a quarter inch on every cut, even though I was dialed in and I knew what I was doing. And I see what you're pulling out of this quarter-inch pieces right off the machine. I'm like, oh man, that's amazing. It's an amazing tool.
Well, it's the machine. It's pretty ingenious if you think about it. It actually uses, so it's got a 100-pound pressure roller on top, right? So the piece runs through saw, and just above that, right after the blade, it's got 100 pounds pressing it to a perfectly flat reference surface.
There you go.
So you can't beat it. I mean, I guess the only thing you would deal with that machine is it's the width of the saw blade is where for about a split second it doesn't have any pressure, because you would in theory need the rollers to be on top of the blade, but you will get a little exit drift, and that's actually why I cut the blocks a little bit longer now, so I can chop them.
Okay.
So,
makes sense.
Yep.
So a couple last questions here. From my viewers, I know who you sell to, but who else are you selling to? You got some individual customers. I know myself, Lucky Dog. Who else are you selling to these days?
The lion's share of what makes up Kimball Hardwoods business is customers like yourself. We sell 50% of our sales are international, believe it or not.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we sell. So I created it's kind of a love-hate relationship with eBay, right? So I started out humble beginnings. You start off there and you're doing great. eBay thanks me very much, because now I'm doing a lot of business on eBay, and they're obviously charging exorbitant fees. But I'm grateful for the opportunity, so it's not a total loss. And we have a horrible website, to be honest with you. And we're in the process of we hired a new designer, and then I think by mid-March we'll be unveiling a much better website. And so the goal is to really, it's not just to pull people off eBay, but to introduce them to more tools and functions, to let them interact, to use, with eBay everything is monitored and restricted. And anyway, so
I know I think everyone forgets that you are literally touching every piece. You're taking the pictures, you're writing the description.
Yes.
You've got to touch every piece of wood. And I think that's where a lot of the old guys just don't have that patience to do that. And I notice I've got your seal of approval on every piece of wood because you're doing it.
Yeah, well, that's the long hours. It's I could pay somebody to do something, but I'm one of those owners. What I do. But with certain things, I'm not willing to budge. Not willing to hire someone who's not skilled to grade and cut and package and ship, because I want to look at it one last time, make sure, did I do this thing right? Is the customer going to be happy? And it's actually a do it to a fault, and I'm always getting teased by family about it. But it's like, I was that guy buying wood back when I couldn't afford it, and I wanted what I thought I was going to get, so I never forgot that. So, but as far as
awesome. So we got new website coming. Anything else after that? Sort of like what's your sort of anything through the summer? Are you doing another trip or out to
I
to
am.
Canada or anything?
Yeah, I'm going in. I'm supposed to go in March up to Canada. I'm going to be buying 80 logs, and
Oh my God.
so we'll be buying some eastern soft and hard curly maple. I have to go grade them and hand select them, and then bird's eye and some curly birch. And I made that commitment about a year ago, so I'll be up there.
Cool.
I'm also. I'll let a couple cats out of the bag here, so I am committed at some point. I don't know when. We're going to start doing body wood, tone wood, and
Cool.
so I've got on the list of items we're going to be processing swamp ash, Honduran mahogany, genuine mahogany, sapele, African mahogany, black limba, and
Oh wow.
maybe light white limba, but it's trickier.
Oh my God. I don't think people understand white limba is immediately splits if you resaw it and you don't let it acclimate. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a tricky wood to work with. Like people, it's great tone wood. But man, if you don't know what you're doing, I think my first 1,000 board feet I went through, I completely ruined myself. I was like, oh, I gotta let this sit a little bit longer.
yep. Yeah, well, Derek. What happens is, and I don't know this, when you buy, because this is what we're going to do, buy full container over in Africa, and
Yep.
what a lot of people don't realize is the wood's not really kiln dried at all, and the wood needs to be monitored. To come back here, it's got to be properly kiln dried. Then it has to acclimate. It's very temperamental.
So you've got a kiln there, don't you? That's the other thing. Like you're also doing some additional drying, and you're making sure all the wood is what it needs to be at, right?
Yeah, I'm a stickler. So I have an agreement with a large mill here in the state, and they do my dry. We partnered where they actually do my wet sawing for logs, and I have my wood dried there. But I'm a real stickler. I will take stuff like right now, all my wet quilted maple blocks I sticker and air dry, because depending on the wood species, I'll use quilt as an example. There's a critical zone anywhere from
Yeah.
I've cut quilt that was 60, almost 70% moisture, which is unfathomable. And you can't just take that block and throw it in the kiln. It will explode. We call it explode. It'll tear out from the center. It'll stain.
Yep.
Forget it. So I actually will take wood. You got to get it down to about 25%. If you can get wood to 25%, it's kiln safe. You put it in the kiln, and at that point, it'll have done all it's going to do, whether splitting, warping, cracking, staining. And so yeah, it's babysitting, a lot of it too. So I never really stop, Derek. That's the thing. I just go, 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 go. It's if it's not the wood that's not on my mind, it's the customers and what's coming up. So one other.
So we'll let you get back to work here, man. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so right now I'm accessible either through KimballHardwoods.com, through our messaging center. You can send us, if you do follow us on any of the Instagram or Facebook, you can send us a message through Messenger, and we can communicate that way. We can communicate through eBay, but I prefer not to, only because the eBay police will try to suppress our communication. So, but we can do that too if that's your best form of communication. And
Awesome.
so,
Well, thank you for the time this morning. I will definitely be watching you and appreciate you spending a half hour here talking us through your process. And we all wish you luck, and we will definitely be following you here on Instagram and Facebook, and keep us. I don't know what it is, sort of starstruck at all the wood you've got going on, man.
yeah, well, I appreciate the opportunity. It's been great dealing with you and everybody. Appreciate the opportunity, guys.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, thanks, Derek. Yeah.
Again, thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate all the feedback that you give me. Let me know in the comments what you think, who else I should do some interviews with. And I really enjoy these long-form conversations. Have a great Sunday, and we'll see you in the next video.